Has there ever been a comic book movie more widely mocked than X-Men Origins Wolverine? Batman and Robin can be enjoyed as a so bad it's good comedy, Daredevil 2003 has its fans, and plenty who will swear by the director's cut. Even the much despised X-Men The Last Stand has its moments. But if 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine is ever brought up in conversation, it's only ever to talk about its bad VFX, how it completely mishandled the character of Deadpool, or just what a terrible idea it was. So why, 15 years later, is it still being made fun of and generally considered one of the worst comic book movies ever made? So by the late 2000s, the X-Men movies have become one of the only truly successful film franchises based on Marvel Comics, along with Spider-Man, and their trajectory followed Sam Raimi's trilogy. The first film was an unexpected hit that turned multiple cast members into stars. The second was an even bigger success, usually talked about as the best in the series, and in a world before The Dark Knight, considered a strong contender for one of the best superhero movies ever made. And the third? Anyway, X-Men The Last Stand I already mentioned as a widely mocked movie, and it was the result of Fox wanting to rush a third film into production immediately to capitalise on the success of X-Men 2. But while Bryan Singer, director of that and the first one, was renegotiating his contract, the deal was held up by producer Tom Rothman, who fans will remember the Deadpool movie happily taking shots at. While this was happening, Warner Brothers undercut Fox by offering Bryan Singer a chance to direct Superman Returns, and once he left, Fox rushed The Last Stand into production, and it absolutely shows in the finished film. But despite bad critical reviews, and fans considering it the weakest one in the series, the box office receipts meant that the X-Men films still had plenty of goodwill in the public's eye to keep the franchise going. In fact, there was one cast member whose career was made by the films, and his character was still iconic enough to warrant his own spin-off. Has anyone had more of an overnight success story than Hugh Jackman? He got his start doing musicals in Australia and had already gotten an Olivier Award nomination for his work in Oklahoma on the West End, but he was unknown in the film world. So he wasn't actually the first choice for Wolverine. That role had already been given to Scottish actor Doug Ray Scott, who had been put on the map thanks to his role as the Prince in Drew Barrymore's Cinderella retelling Ever After. And having got famous in a lighter genre, this was part of his attempt to rebrand as an action star, like Hugh himself would end up doing. But the next film he was part of was Mission Impossible 2, and the shooting of that ran so over schedule that he had to drop out of X-Men, and the rest is history. It seemed almost like God himself was saying that Hugh Jackman had to be Wolverine. Even now, when the X-Men films have been rebooted and prequeled to death, he's the only live-action Wolverine we've had so far, playing the role in 10 films and considered the definitive portrayal to a lot of people. He also spent the 2000s showing that he was more than just Wolverine, with a mixture of more commercial films like the fun cult classic Van Helsing, and smaller hard-hitting dramas like The Fountain and The Prestige. And after X-Men 2 had touched on Wolverine's backstory, it seemed like a no-brainer to build an entire film around him. X-Men Origins Wolverine had been in development since 2004, spurred on by the smash hit that was X-Men 2, and David Boinev was hired as the screenwriter. Yes, that one. Hugh Jackman himself was also a lot more involved with the script for this one, wanting to depart slightly from the spectacle that the previous X-Men films had been about, and focus more on the character of Wolverine, says him. I don't want the film to appear at all like X-Men 4 in disguise. I want it to feel like a very fresh, whole new character piece. I want it to be a character movie. David Boinev's favourite storyline involving the character came from the 1982 comic series Wolverine, written by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, and also took aspects from the 1991 Weapon X story arc, which told the story of Wolverine getting his claws through the framework of a slasher story, with Logan as the killer stalking his victims, and also from the 2001 comic Origin, which touched on his life before Weapon X. They aimed for something darker, with a lot more brutality, maybe even with an R rating. Gavin Hood was hired to direct, and despite not being a comic book fan, found the character of Wolverine quite appealing for his self-loathing and the fact that he's at constant war with his own nature. This would also be the first live-action appearance of fan favourite Gambit, who had nearly shown up in The Last Stand, and Deadpool, whose solo movie had been in development since 2003 but had fallen through, and so Ryan Reynolds took a small part in this film just to get a chance to play the character anyway. Sabretooth would also be brought back for the first time since X-Men 1, now recast with Liev Schreiber, and the film going ahead and making him and Wolverine half-brothers, which had only ever been implied at most before. A tie-in comic actually explained that he looked different by getting his memory wiped and experimented on to be more feral, so it's nice to see actual continuity in the X-Men series. So with all these cooks who seem to be really enthusiastic about doing something different and making a good film, what the hell happened? The first danger sign was the 2007 writer's strike, which was announced before the script had been finalised, leading to a rushed rewrite to get it locked in before the strike again. According to Gavin Hood, they went into filming with the script still not finished. Since Fox were initially dead set on a 2008 release at first, though they did eventually push it back to 2009, and when they were filming in Australia, they were still getting new script pages from Los Angeles, often the night before they had to film the scenes in question. Gavin Hood was also in constant arguments with the higher-ups at Fox over the film's tone. He had intended to depict Logan as a shell-shocked army veteran, examining what kind of PTSD he might be experiencing from having fought in 4 different wars over 100 years, and drawing from his own military experience. But Fox, however, insisted that audiences wouldn't be interested in themes like that, and that things should be kept to within the realms of a standard PG-13 blockbuster. Gavin Hood had been an art house director beforehand, and admitted he was untested with blockbusters, resulting in a lot of arguments with the aforementioned Tom Rotham. His micromanaging included physically having sets being repainted behind his back to be much lighter and softer, and most infamously, taking Deadpool and having his mouth sewn shut, rendering the character unrecognisable, all supposedly out of fear that it would be too entertaining and steal the spotlight from Wolverine. The movie's title was even changed behind Gavin Hood's back, which he didn't realise until Hugh Jackman showed him the IMDb page. There were also scenes filmed by a second unit that didn't even try to match his vision, resulting in weird tonal shifts in the action scenes, which looked more like something out of an 80s blockbuster. There were also some typical delays thanks to bad weather and Hugh Jackman's commitments to Australia. And to cap off a nightmare production, a preview copy of the film with unfinished VFX was leaked and uploaded to the internet a month before its release, and an estimated 4.5 million people downloaded it. And even with consideration for how the leaked version was obviously not fully finished, things were spelled out for fans already. X-Men Origins Wolverine was even worse than Last Stand, and this time it wouldn't have the goodwill from the 2 previously well-received entries to convince people to at least go to the cinema out of curiosity. And while a worldwide gross of $373 million isn't that bad, The Last Stand had grossed $460 million, and the critics and audiences being united in their dislike did not spell out good things for this franchise. X-Men Origins Wolverine was actually one of many spin-offs planned to focus on individual characters who may have got lost in the shuffle in the original trilogy, and the next one in mind was about Magneto. The disaster that was this production and the disappointing box office returns meant that the X-Men film series as it currently was could no longer be seen as a bankable property. But around the same time, Marvel had started to produce their own films and had already seen a lot of success with Iron Man, and of course had plans to create an entire cinematic universe where all their superheroes could appear alongside each other. So to avoid the film rights to the X-Men reverting back to Marvel, they incorporated plans for the Magneto spin-off into a prequel, focusing on the younger versions of him and Charles Xavier as they formed the first team of X-Men. Although certain obvious character changes suggest it was planned as an alternate continuity, until its sequel changed hands from Matthew Vaughn to Bryan Singer and decided to tie all the films together, this one only featured Wolverine in a cameo, probably also to distance himself from Origins, and its financial success meant that the reboot worked and the X-Men would stay on the big screen. Hugh Jackman himself didn't have good things to say about Origins, and resolved to do a better job in the future. He would get another chance at a solo movie, with 2013's The Wolverine being considered a significant improvement on Origins and a financial success, and the film intended to be his swan song, Logan, in 2017, being considered the best of the 3, and finally got the R rating they'd envisioned from the beginning, spurred on by the success of
Oh, hello.
Ryan Reynolds was not quiet about how much he hated what was done to Deadpool in Origins, and was determined to play the character again.
I'm looking for Francis. Have you seen this man?
Getting his wish when test footage leaked onto the internet, and it was obvious that people were very keen to see a more canon-accurate Wade Wilson. He fought for it to be R-rated too, and it ended up becoming the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time for a while. And due to its fourth wall-breaking gimmick, plenty of shots were taken at the Origins version of the character. Gambit's trajectory on the big screen did not go as smoothly, since Channing Tatum spent the entirety of the 2010s trying to get a solo movie, playing him off the ground, and it never materialised. But he got his chance to play the character in this year's Deadpool and Wolverine, making for one of the biggest full-circle moments in modern pop culture. The X-Men have since reverted back to Marvel, once Disney bought Fox in 2019, meaning they are sure to show up in the MCU someday, and with Spider-Man No Way Home introducing the idea of a multiverse where versions of the characters from non-MCU films can appear there, the possibilities are limitless. So, in hindsight, while X-Men Origins Wolverine was a nightmare, behind the scenes and on screen, the disaster that it was did lead to a lot of good things that we can be very grateful for. And there are even aspects of it that we can appreciate, such as a much better portrayal of Sabretooth than X-Men 1, so I think we can call that a silver lining. X-Men Origins Wolverine is now 15 years old, and it doesn't have much of a legacy, but it exists and served as something of a wake-up call that led to several things I, and many others, very much appreciate.
Oh, are you? No!
Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, it helps a lot, and comment your thoughts on X-Men Origins Wolverine down below.